Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's podcast. I'm Emma, and with me is Max.
Hi, everyone. It's great to have you here. Today, we'll be talking about something very important: how to overcome common mistakes in English.
Yes, mistakes are part of learning, but some of them happen again and again, right?
Exactly, but don't worry, if you know these mistakes and how to fix them, your English will get much better. Let's start with one of the most common ones, mixing up he and she.
Oh yes, that's a big one. Sometimes learners say he is my sister or she is my brother.
Right. It happens because in some languages, the words for he and she are the same or very similar. But in English, they're different, so always check. He is for boys and men, and she is for girls and women.
That's a good tip, Max, to practice. You can try this. Look at pictures of people or think about your friends and say, he is ... double quotes or she is ...
Great idea, Emma. Another mistake learners often make is using the wrong verb form after I. For example, I goes to school or I likes pizza.
Yes, the correct way is I go to school and I like pizza. The verb doesn't need an S after I.
That's right. Here's an easy way to remember. Only add S or as to the verb when you're talking about he, she, or it.
So you would say she likes pizza or he goes to school.
Exactly. Practice speaking sentences like this. It will help you get used to the correct form.
Another mistake is forgetting to use articles like a, an, or the. For example, I saw a dog instead of I saw a dog.
Yes, articles are small but very important. And are used when you talk about something for the first time or something general. This is used when it's something specific or already mentioned.
Like this, I saw a dog. The dog was very cute.
Perfect example. Emma, if you're not sure which one to use, just start practicing with simple sentences like, I have a book or the book is on the table.
Another common issue is using good and well the wrong way.
Yes, like saying, I play piano good instead of I play piano well.
That's because good is an adjective and well is an adverb. If you're describing a noun, like a good meal, you use good. But if you're describing a verb, like play, you use well.
Exactly. A trick to remember is, if it's about how something is done, use well.
Here's a mistake I hear often, forgetting the difference between there, and there.
Oh yes, let's break it down. There talks about a place, like the book is over there.
There shows ownership, like their house is big.
And there is short for they are, like they're coming to the party.
A good way to remember is to think about what you want to say. Is it about a place, ownership, or they are?
That's a helpful tip, Emma. It just takes a little practice to get used to these differences.
Another mistake is using double negatives, like I don't have no money.
That's a common one. In English, to negatives make a positive, so saying, I don't have no money means you do have money.
The correct way is I don't have any money.
Exactly. Instead of no, use any in sentences with don't or doesn't.
This is really helpful, Max. What about pronunciation mistakes?
Oh, there are many, but one that stands out is confusing the V and W sounds.
Like saying wary instead of very.
Exactly. To fix this, try this exercise. For V, your top teeth should lightly touch your bottom lip, like very. For W, your lips should make a small circle, like water.
That's great advice. Another one is saying tree instead of three.
Yes, that's tricky. The TH sound needs your tongue to touch the back of your teeth. Practice slowly. TH ... 3.
These small changes can make a big difference.
Absolutely. It's all about practice and paying attention to these details.
And that's why we're here to help you spot these mistakes and learn how to fix them.
Let's keep going. There's so much more to talk about.
All right, let's talk about another mistake that happens a lot. Using the wrong prepositions. Prepositions like in, on, and at can be tricky, right?
Oh yes. For example, many learners say, I was born on 1995, but the correct way is I was born in 1995.
That's a good example. So here's a quick rule. Use in for months, years, and long periods of time. Like in July in 2020 or in the 18th century.
And use on for specific days or dates like on Monday or on November 10th.
Right, and add is for specific times or places, like at 5 o'clock or at the bus stop.
A helpful tip is to practice by thinking about your daily routine. You could say, I wake up at 7 a.m., go to school on weekdays, and my birthday is in April.
That's a great idea. Prepositions are small words, but they're very important to get right.
Another common mistake is word ordering questions. For example, learners might say, you like pizza, instead of do you like pizza?
Yes, in English, most questions need a helping verb like do, does, or did. So instead of saying, she went to the park, you should say, did she go to the park?
That's true, and don't forget about the verb to be. With this verb, you don't need do or does. For example, are you ready? Or is she at home?
Exactly. It can feel confusing at first, but with practice, it gets easier.
Speaking of questions, many learners also forget to use the right intonation when asking.
Oh, that's a good point. For yes or no questions, your voice should go up at the end, like, do you like coffee?
And for WH questions, like what's your name, the voice usually goes down at the end. Practicing this can make your questions sound more natural.
Absolutely. Let's move to another mistake, confusing make and do.
Yes. For example, people say, I do a mistake, but the correct way is I make a mistake.
Right. Here's a simple way to remember. Use make when you're creating or producing something, like make dinner, make a plan, or make a decision.
And use do for activities, tasks, or work, like do homework, do the dishes, or do a favor.
That's helpful. A good practice is to write down common phrases with make and do and read them out loud.
Another mistake is forgetting to use plural forms. For example, saying 3 apple instead of 3 apples.
Yes, in English, if you're talking about more than one thing, you usually add this or s, like dogs, cars, or buses.
That's true, but remember, some words are irregular. For example, child becomes children and man becomes men.
A good way to learn these is to make flashcards with singular and plural forms and review them often.
Great idea. Now let's talk about tenses. Many learners mix up the past simple and present perfect. For example, saying I have saw that movie instead of I have seen that movie.
Yes, the present perfect uses have or has plus the past participle like seen, done, or gone.
And the past simple doesn't use have or has, it's just I saw, I did, or I went.
Here's an easy way to remember. Use the past simple when you're talking about a specific time in the past, like yesterday or last year. Use the present perfect when the time isn't specific or when it connects to now.
For example, I saw that movie last week, but I have seen that movie already.
Exactly. Practice this by writing sentences about things you've done and things you did at specific times.
Another big challenge is using to and very the wrong way.
Oh yes, for example, some learners say the food is too delicious, but the correct way is the food is very delicious.
That's because to means more than enough or more than good, so to delicious means it's so delicious that it's a problem.
Good point. A better example for to is, the food is too spicy for me.
And very just means a lot, like very hot or very good.
Another tricky one is confusing since and for.
Oh, I hear that mistake a lot. For example, I've lived here since 2 years. It should be I've lived here for 2 years.
Right. Use since with a starting point, like since 2015 or since I was a child. Use for with a length of time, like for 2 years or for a long time.
A good way to practice is to talk about your own life. Think about when things started and how long they've been happening.
Great advice. Max, here's another mistake. Saying I'm agree instead of I agree.
Yes, in English, agree is a verb, so we say I agree. You don't need am or I'm before it.
That's right. It's the same for other verbs like know or think. You wouldn't say I'm know or I'm think.
These small changes can make your English sound much smoother.
And that's why it's so important to practice and keep learning. Let's keep exploring more tips.
Let's continue with some more common mistakes. One big one is using he or she the wrong way. For example, people might say, "My brother, she is a teacher."
That's right, Max, in English. He is for males, like brother or father, and she is for females, like sister or mother. It's important to match the pronoun to the person.
Exactly, and remember, for things or animals, we usually use it, but for pets, if you love them like family, you can say he or she.
Good tip. Another mistake is forgetting articles like a, an, or the. For example, people say, I saw a movie yesterday, but it should be I saw a movie yesterday.
Yes, articles are small words, but they're important. Use a or an for one thing that's not specific, like a book or an apple.
And use the when you're talking about something specific, like the book on the table or the apple I ate.
A simple practice is to look around you and describe things. Say, I see a chair, or the chair is black.
That's a great exercise. Let's talk about spelling mistakes now. One common problem is mixing up there, and there.
Oh, yes, these words sound the same but have different meanings. There shows possession, like their house is big.
And there refers to a place, like the keys are over there.
Lastly, there is short for they are, like they're going to the park.
A good way to avoid this mistake is to write sentences with each word and say them out loud.
Another spelling issue is confusing your and your. For example, saying you're right instead of you're right.
Yes, your shows something belongs to you, like your book is on the table.
And your is short for you are, like you're my best friend.
Simple tip, if you can replace the word with you are in your sentence, then you need your.
Speaking of short forms, let's talk about contractions. Some learners avoid them completely, but contractions are very common in English.
That's true. Instead of saying, I am not going, you can say, I'm not going. It sounds more natural.
Or instead of she is my friend, say, she's my friend.
Contractions make your English sound more like a native speaker, but be careful not to mix them up. For example, it's as short for it is, but it's without the apostrophe shows possession, like the dog wagged its tail.
Good point. Another tricky mistake is using the wrong verb form after modals like can, should, or must. For example, he can sings is wrong. It should be he can sing.
That's right. After modals, always use the base form of the verb like can go, should eat, or must try.
Here's an example. You must study is correct, but you must studied is not.
Yes, and remember, modals don't change with subjects. We say she can run and they can run, not she can't run.
Another mistake is forgetting to use possessives correctly. For example, people say, this is the book of John, but it's better to say, this is John's book.
Yes, in English, we use an apostrophe with S to show possession, like Emma's bag or Max's pen.
But be careful with plural nouns. For example, the dog's owner means the owner of all the dogs, while the dog's owner means the owner of one dog.
That's a great tip. Let's move on to pronunciation mistakes. Many learners struggle with the difference between V and W.
Yes, for example, some people say wine when they mean vine. A good way to practice is by exaggerating the sounds. For V, your teeth touch your bottom lip, like very. For W, your lips make a small circle, like water.
Another tricky pair is TH and S. For example, saying sink instead of think.
Right. For TH, your tongue should come out a little, like think or this. For S, keep your tongue behind your teeth, like snake or sun.
It takes practice, but listening to native speakers and repeating what they say can really help.
Another pronunciation tip, stress the right syllable in words. For example, many learners say photograph instead of photograph.
Yes, English has specific rules for word stress. It's good to check a dictionary if you're not sure. Most dictionaries show which syllable to stress.
Now, let's talk about cultural mistakes. Some learners translate directly from their language, but the meaning doesn't always work in English. For example, saying close the light instead of turn off the light.
That's true. English has its own way of expressing things, and it's not always logical. Another example is saying, I'm feeling boring, which means you are boring. The correct way is I'm feeling bored.
Yes, to sound natural, try to learn phrases instead of just individual words.
Good advice, Max. And finally, don't be afraid of making mistakes. Everyone makes them, even native speakers.
Exactly. Mistakes are a part of learning. The more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
That's right. So keep speaking, keep writing, and most importantly, keep enjoying English.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. If you found these tips helpful, please subscribe to our channel and share this with your family and friends.